April 1945. Berlin was a city on the edge of annihilation. Bombs tore through residential blocks, streets ran red with firelight, and the roar of tanks echoed like the growl of a beast closing in on its prey. Amid the chaos, the Wehrmacht General moved with calculated precision. Unlike many who panicked and fled blindly, he had spent years preparing for the unthinkable, an escape from a collapsing regime. Every step was deliberate, every decision cold and methodical. He knew the Allies were closing in, their boots marching closer with each passing hour. But he wasn't about to become another casualty lost in the rubble of history. The general's disappearance wasn't a desperate sprint. It was a carefully orchestrated vanishing act. He slipped through hidden corridors beneath the city, long forgotten tunnels that only a few knew existed. Guards loyal to him provided coded warnings, and in the shadows of bombed-out streets, he moved almost like a ghost. Civilians caught glimpses of him, an authoritative figure with a sharp gaze and an air of calm determination. But no one could predict his destination. He had studied maps, memorized escape routes, and calculated supply caches that would sustain him if he survived the first harrowing nights outside Berlin's walls. Every move he made was a gamble, and yet he played it perfectly. As Berlin fell into chaos, rumors began to swirl among the surviving soldiers. Some claimed he had perished in the Fu Herr bunker. Others whispered he had been captured by Allied forces. But those who had seen him last knew something else. The general was gone, disappeared into the night, a shadow among shadows, and while the city burned behind him, he moved steadily, disappearing into the outskirts, leaving no footprints, no trace, only questions that would linger for decades. Even decades later, historians would puzzle over the precision of his escape, wondering how a man so meticulously hunted could vanish so completely from the face of a collapsing empire. For decades after the fall of Berlin, the Wehrmacht General's disappearance became one of the most tantalizing enigmas of the Second World War. Scholars, journalists, and even intelligence agencies speculated endlessly. Some believed he had died in the chaos, his body swallowed by rubble or thrown into the Spree River. Others whispered that he had managed to flee to South America, blending into a life of quiet anonymity. Letters, vague sightings, and contradictory reports trickled in from across Europe, each one a tantalizing piece of a puzzle that refused to be solved. Every claim sparked debates and investigations, but every lead ended in frustration and dead ends. The mystery deepened because of the general's own reputation. Known for his cunning, strategic mind, and meticulous planning, the man had anticipated that the Allies would hunt him relentlessly. He had trained his subordinates to leave false trails, to mislead anyone who might pursue him, and even to destroy evidence of his whereabouts. Entire files and testimonies hinted at a man who could vanish without a trace, as though he had planned his disappearance decades in advance. Government scoured archives, examined old battle maps, and questioned surviving officers, yet no concrete evidence ever emerged. Every attempt to pinpoint his fate only seemed to underscore one terrifying fact: he might have truly outwitted the world. As the years turned into decades, the legend of the missing general took on a life of its own. Books were written, documentaries produced, and online forums buzzed with speculation about where he might have gone. Some claimed he had lived quietly in Europe, hidden in the mountains, waiting for the world to forget him. Others suggested he had left behind a network of secrets, perhaps even influencing events long after the war ended. The unanswered questions became almost supernatural in their persistence, and the more people searched, the more the mystery seemed to grow, lingering like a shadow that refused to be chased away. Nearly 8 decades after the general vanished, the Alps, steep, silent, and often unforgiving, became the unlikely stage for his secrets to resurface. A group of hikers, seeking nothing more than the thrill of uncharted trails, stumbled upon something that would reignite a decades-old mystery. At first, it was subtle, a faded envelope tucked inside a crevice of a weathered rock wall, brittle with age but still intact. Inside were letters, written in meticulous German script, hinting at hidden locations, secret routes, and coded instructions that seemed almost impossible to decipher. The hikers didn't know it then, but they had just uncovered the first breadcrumbs of a trail that had been left behind deliberately, or perhaps accidentally, by a man who had spent years perfecting the art of disappearing. As curiosity drove them further into the jagged peaks, they discovered additional artifacts, old maps, partially burned photographs, and scraps of clothing that had survived decades of harsh alpine winters. Each discovery hinted at a presence long thought impossible, a life maintained in secrecy. Far from prying eyes, the terrain itself was a formidable accomplice. Hidden valleys, treacherous cliffs, and dense forests created natural barriers that discouraged casual exploration. Anyone trying to follow the trail without the proper knowledge would likely turn back, exhausted and disoriented. And yet, for those who persevered, the evidence painted a chilling picture of preparation, foresight, and a relentless desire to remain unseen. The more the hikers uncovered, the deeper the mystery seemed to sink its roots. The letters spoke of rendezvous points, safe houses, and even coded messages meant to mislead potential pursuers. Though faded and fragmented, the documents revealed a mind that had remained several steps ahead of history itself. Each clue pointed to a more permanent refuge, a location carefully chosen, fortified, and concealed from the world. The Alps, with their imposing peaks and shadowed valleys, had not just sheltered the general, they had become an elaborate stage for a disappearance that would confound generations. And as the hikers traced the trail further, the sense of being watched, or perhaps being led, grew ever more palpable, as though the mountains themselves were guarding a secret that had waited 79 years to be discovered. After weeks of navigating narrow trails, snow-dusted ridges, and thick alpine forests, the hikers stumbled upon the villa itself, a structure so well hidden it seemed almost impossible to exist. From the outside, it looked like an abandoned mountain retreat, its stone walls weathered by decades of storms and frost. Windows were shuttered, and ivy crept along the facade, blending the building seamlessly into the surrounding wilderness. But even in its seemingly quiet exterior, there was a sense of foreboding. The air felt heavier, as though the mountains were holding their breath. Every step closer intensified the feeling that they were on the verge of uncovering something that had been deliberately kept from the world. Inside, the villa was a time capsule frozen in the mid-20th century. Dust coated every surface, but the orderliness of the room spoke of a life once meticulously maintained. Faded furniture, carefully stacked books, and meticulously labeled boxes suggested that someone had lived here with an obsessive attention to detail. Old newspapers lined a corner, recounting events from the late 1940s and 1950s, yet no one had disturbed them for decades. On the walls hung portraits and maps, some annotated with coded symbols, hinting at movements, contacts, and perhaps even untold operations. The villa was more than a hiding place. It was a carefully orchestrated life preserved in secrecy, a world that had existed in parallel to history itself. In the deepest part of the villa, the explorers found remnants of what could only be described as a secret life. A small study contained journals, meticulously written and filled with details of daily routines, coded messages, and records of people who had come and gone unnoticed by the outside world. Hidden compartments revealed letters and artifacts that seemed to confirm decades of careful evasion, while old photographs showed the general, or someone resembling him, moving through the Alps, always alert, always watching. The weight of history pressed in as they realized this villa wasn't just shelter. It was a vault of secrets, a physical manifestation of a life hidden from the eyes of the world. Every item they uncovered deepened the mystery, hinting at connections and conspiracies that had remained buried for nearly 80 years. As the explorers delved deeper into the villa, what they discovered began to blur the lines between history and legend. Among the journals and letters was a series of photographs, some torn and faded, others surprisingly well preserved. At first glance, they seemed to depict the general alone, meticulously moving through the Alps, surviving in secret. But then, in the corner of one photo, a shadowy figure appeared, a person whose face was obscured, yet whose presence was unmistakable. The realization hit slowly: he had not been alone. Someone had shared his hiding place, someone who may have been complicit in his decades-long evasion, or perhaps even guiding events from behind the scenes. The questions multiplied: who was this person? And what role had they played in the web of secrecy that had endured for nearly 80 years? Even more chilling were the coded messages found hidden behind floorboards and within the lining of old furniture. These weren't just records of movement or survival. They contained references to operations, unexplained disappearances, and hints of a network that extended far beyond the villa. The general's life in hiding had not been passive. It had been calculated, connected, and possibly still influencing outcomes long after the war had ended. Every map, every artifact seemed to whisper that the story wasn't finished, that what had been concealed for decades was only the beginning of a much larger, darker truth. The villa, it seemed, was not merely a retreat. It was a command center, a repository of secrets that the world had never been meant to find. And then came the final, most unsettling discovery: a small locked chest tucked away in a hidden alcove beneath the basement stairs. It bore no label, only a heavy iron lock and a sense of foreboding that made the explorers hesitate. When they finally forced it open, what lay inside sent a shiver down their spines. Personal belongings that suggested the general's presence had continued far longer than anyone could have imagined, and items that hinted at alliances, betrayals, and plans that might have changed history in ways still unknown. It became painfully clear that the villa was not just a relic. It was a living testament to decades of secrecy, deception, and survival. And somewhere within those walls, the echoes of the past seemed almost alive. As the sunlight faded behind the jagged peaks of the Swiss Alps, the villa seemed to hold its breath. Every artifact, every photograph, every coded letter whispered the same chilling truth: history had been watching, waiting, and keeping secrets some were never meant to uncover. The general's disappearance was no accident. It was a plan, a carefully executed vanishing act that had outlasted decades, outsmarted historians, and eluded the world. But the most unsettling thought lingered in the cold mountain air. If he had hidden for 79 years, had someone else carried on his legacy? Had the shadows he left behind stretched farther than anyone dared imagine? The villa had kept its silence for nearly 8 decades, guarding the truth of a life spent in the shadows, a life that may still have echoes reaching into the present. And as the mountains swallowed the sun, leaving the villa cloaked in twilight, one thing became terrifyingly clear. Some secrets do not die with time. They wait, they watch. And when the world thinks it has forgotten, they resurface, ready to remind us that the past is never truly gone.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.